A year ago, our kids threw us a party for our 25th wedding anniversary. It was a huge celebration with everything going on. All of our friends were there, we got a ton of gifts, and life was pretty good at that point, even though I knew we were slowly drifting apart even though we lived in the same house together. My wife Carol and I met in our senior year of college, and the rest is history. We fell in love, married, and had two wonderful sons, both of whom are currently graduating from college. We are now almost empty nestlings and should be enjoying the fruits of our labor, but have run into a bit of a problem. I've gotten younger and she hasn't. I haven't gotten physically younger. Rather, I had a midlife crisis when I turned 50 this year. Don't let anyone tell you that 50 is just a number and you shouldn't worry about it because that's bullshit. I began to look back and say to myself, what if? And was determined to never say those words again. The pressure of taking care of the kids was lifted, and we had a lot of free time and money for the first time. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my chest, and I felt more alert than I had in a hell of a long time. At work, I got 4 weeks of vacation every year, and over the years I had accumulated another 4 weeks of unused sick and vacation time. What the hell was I going to do with 8 weeks of vacation? I started making some changes, small changes at first. I stopped dressing like my father. My suits and my entire closet were outdated, to say the least, and needed to be brought back to the 20th century. One more thing. I had somehow developed a spare tire around my middle over the last 10 years, and needed to get rid of it before I went crazy and bought new stuff. When I told Carol I wanted to eat more salads and less meat, she didn't say anything back. But when I started getting up early to make it to the gym before work, she paid attention. She probably thought it was a phase like my New Year's resolutions that would pass with time, but it didn't. It took me 3.5 stinking months of hard workouts to lose the 18 pounds I had gained. I had more energy and tried to use it by increasing our life, but it just wasn't the right thing to do. I think our life got a little worse over the years. It went from white hot, from good to good, and finally to normal when I actually got any, which was about once every 9 days. I had always insisted on more entertainment, but now I was taking it to the next level, and this did not meet with the approval of my wife, who was happy with the way things were. Steve, I'm not 20 years old anymore. I can't be doing this 5 times a week, she stated to me unequivocally. How about we stop at 3? I asked, or begged in this case. Carol said she'd think about it, but wouldn't guarantee anything. As usual, nothing changed. You see, we got into a rut. We both got up in the mornings for work around 6 o'clock, give or take 5 minutes. We both drank coffee for breakfast while I perused the newspaper. We both drove to work, which started at 8, and I would relieve myself between 5 and 5:30 to drive the 25 minutes home. Once home, I would check the mail, change my clothes, and usually set the table. Carol would leave at 4:30 and have something ready for me by the time I arrived. We'd eat, wash the dishes, and then read the paper. After that, we would split up and do our own thing for the next 2 hours and then get ready for bed. I laid out my clothes for the next day, brushed and flossed my teeth, and then went to bed to watch the news. If I was able to get Carol in the mood, we did that, and were asleep in 40 minutes. The next day, we were back to doing the same boring stuff. We were becoming parents, and I wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. I began to demand less entertainment. A bottle of her favorite wine, flowers now and then, a foot massage, and other things were welcome. It improved her mood, but it didn't make us closer. When we didn't make love the first week, I didn't say anything. When 2 weeks went by, I started hinting. And when 3 weeks went by, I finally said, Carol, don't you enjoy making love to me anymore? I said as tactfully as possible. Steve, what kind of question is that? Of course I like it. Then why don't we do it more often? Steve, we do it all the time. Honey, it's been 3 weeks. I haven't molested you once, but I wanted to wait and see how long you would tolerate it before you noticed, but you didn't seem to notice. So you want to fool around tonight? If so, we'd better get started because it's getting late. Carol, I don't look at this as some chore that needs to be done and out of the way. I think of it as something special that brings us closer together, I tried to tell her, but she wasn't listening. Steve, do you want to do it or not? She finally asked, a little perturbed that I was criticizing her for not wanting to do it anymore. I guess not. I'm not in the mood anymore, I answered her sharply. Come on, let's do it, or you'll never let me hear the end of it, she said in that annoying, whiny voice I'd been hearing more and more often lately. I'll pass, I said, getting out of the car and heading for the bathroom. I took 3 Advil pills for my headache, slipped back into bed and said goodnight, turning my back to her. Don't say I never suggested it, Carol said condescendingly as she opened her book. After that night, I stopped asking. I moved my workouts from mornings to after work, which meant we no longer had dinner together. I liked it better that way because it gave me a chance to relax after work, and there were more people to talk to at the gym. Carol started leaving me a plate of leftovers in the oven, but after 2 months that stopped and I started making my own dinner or coming in after my workout and grabbing a snack. We were drifting away from each other, and if I saw it, so did she. It had been almost 4 months since we'd last made love, and I was determined to get her to initiate it, even if it took forever. My evening showers were getting longer and longer as I got rid of the stress from shaving by hand. I started changing or updating my clothes little by little, and even a few women at work noticed, but my wife didn't say a word. Nah. Are you going to stop sulking this year, or should I sign you up for next January? Carol said as I turned out the lights in the evening. What? You heard me. You're playing a stupid game and I'm sick of it, she said, with a strain in her voice that I had gotten used to by now. Why don't you explain what game you're talking about? Steve, don't play dumb. Just because I'm not giving you 24/7 entertainment, you're sulking. But it's not going to work, she was now yelling at me. Carol, you asked me not to pester you anymore. I'm just doing what you asked me to do. You told me you weren't 20 anymore and you weren't interested anymore, so I was just waiting for you to be in the mood. Don't give me that crap. You're punishing me for not laying Eagle on the bed for you every night, but that's not going to work. I can last as long as you, she said smugly. Listen to yourself, Carol. I'll show Steve, but I won't do it with him. Do you hear what you're saying? I asked her. You're the one who started it, not me. No, Carol, I didn't. I wanted to make love to my wife, and you looked at it as just another chore to get out of the way before we went to bed. I decided to wait until you wanted to do it yourself, rather than forcing you, as you so eloquently put it. Instead, you took it as a challenge to see how long I would hold out, which is pretty pathetic. Looks like I was right a few months ago. You really don't like doing this with me anymore, do you? She only threw me a disapproving look and slipped out the bedroom door. I guess that was the answer to that question. After that night, life became even more stressful. Carol now slept in the guest room and even tried to avoid me in the evenings. When I told her that dinner at my company would be in 2 weeks, she only shrugged her shoulders. On Saturday, the day of the dinner, I had just showered and wondered why I didn't hear Carol getting ready. After finishing getting dressed, I went in search of her. Why aren't you ready? We have to leave in half an hour, I said to my wife, who was still dressed in shorts and a casual top. I'm not going. What the hell do you mean you're not going? I asked in a not too kind tone. When you start treating me like your wife again, I'll start acting like your wife again. But until then, you're on your own. Come on, Carol, cut the crap and get dressed. I said I'm not going, she said, folding her arms in front of her. Fine, keep playing your damn game, I said as I walked down the stairs and grabbed my keys. I was angry. Angry about a million other things. It was my company's annual dinner, and for the first time I had to go alone. And I wasn't happy. I told everyone that Carol wasn't feeling well, and I decided to have a good time anyway. And I didn't realize there were so many single women where I work. I guess when you're married, you don't pay attention to these things, but today I did. I danced with every single one of them at least once. I'm not the best dancer, but I didn't hear a single complaint all night. I may have had a little too much to drink and ended up needing someone to give me a ride home. Diane from customer service lived in my neighborhood and said she would make sure I got home safely. I ended the evening with 2 more dances and another drink. When I walked out into the parking lot, my eyes got as big as saucers when I saw Diane, driving a black 2005 Cobra Mustang. Holy shit, Dee, is that your car? It was my husband's toy until he died. She'd lost her husband to cancer the year before. Can you handle something like this? Buckle up, big guy, and I'll show you what's under her hood. Son of a bitch, holy shit, and oh my god, were just 3 of the phrases I uttered as we drove the scenic route to my house. Diane shifted gears like a race car driver and put me back in my seat more than once. When she finally stopped showing off, we were once again driving within the posted speed limit. I stalled for 6 months before I got up the courage to take her on, she told me. I hadn't driven a stick in ages, and I had to retrain myself pretty quickly. It has a lot of horsepower, but you get used to it after a while. For me, It's a fun weekend car that takes the stress out of the week. If you weren't so drunk, I'd let you ride in it, she said, smiling at me. The 20-minute ride turned into an hour and a half because we stopped for coffee at Denny's. She told me about her husband, and apparently I felt obligated to tell her about Carol. It's time for you two to stop playing games. Life is too short to miss even one day. Take my word for it, I know. I agreed, but told her it takes two to tango. She swept down my street because there were no cars on the roads at 2 in the morning. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I needed help getting inside. Getting inside isn't a problem. The problems will start once I'm inside, I told her with a smirk. She again advised me to get my head out of my ass and told me she'd see me at work on Monday. As I approached the house, I saw Carol look out the window for a split second. She seemed to be waiting for me. Do you even know what time it is? An annoyed Carol asked. Not the slightest clue. Who gave you a ride home? It was Diane, she works with me, I replied. I saw her kiss you for what? I guess not for anything. I was just dancing with her tonight because my wife didn't care enough to go with me, I said, looking at her. So excuse me, I'm tired and I've had too much to drink. If you want to discuss Diana and all the other girls I danced with tonight, I'll be happy to talk to you, but not now, but tomorrow after breakfast, I said as I walked up the stairs. I slept like a baby. Over the next month, I struggled to bury the hatchet. I moved my workouts to the morning so we could have dinner together again. I was sick of all this crap, but I figured I'd make it a couple more weeks before I said anything again. And then Carol did something stupid. I was going through the mail on Thursday and found a receipt for a cruise ticket for the coming week. What the hell is this? I asked, holding out the receipt. I was going to tell you about it tonight. My sister and I are going on a 7-day cruise in the Caribbean. It runs from this Sunday through next Saturday. I just need some time to think about my life. And you can't do that here with me, but you can with your sister? Steve, I just need time, it's no big deal, she said, trying to play it down. Carol, this is very important. If we drift further apart, there's a good chance we'll never be together. Is that what you want? Steve, I don't know what I want anymore, she said, looking at me. Well, I think I have an answer, I said, crumpling up the ticket and tossing it to her. I think I heard her yell something after me, but I made it out the door before I heard it. I think I had finally reached my limit. I went out to dinner alone and visited 2 clubs. I spent $30 on tips and bought drinks for 2 girls before I finally left a little after 1 o'clock. On the way home, I thought about all the places I wanted to visit but never got around to. California wine country stood out among them. I loved wine but could never get Carol to go there. She thought it was boring as hell. I guess if she could go on vacation with her sister, so could I. When I got home, Carol was already asleep. She left me a note saying I was a stubborn asshole for leaving her without giving her a chance to explain herself. I'm the asshole, I said to myself, crumpled up the note and threw it across the kitchen. Bitch, ran through my head as I went upstairs and gathered enough clothes to be absent until she left. The Holiday Inn across the street from work was my logical choice, since I'd gotten about 3 hours of sleep on Thursday night. I told the receptionist that under no circumstances did I want her to transfer a call from my wife, Carol. I turned off my cell phone and decided to hide for the next 72 hours. Nevertheless, I checked out the wine country tours. The 10-day tour, including airfare, meals, and transportation, cost me just over $2,500. I booked it for Saturday when Carol was due back. As soon as I turned on my cell phone, there were 8 calls from Carol asking where the hell I was and why I wasn't returning her calls. Nevertheless, I asked Diane what she was doing Saturday afternoon. If you're not doing anything, I'd like to take you up on your offer for a test drive. You think you're man enough to handle it, she said with a smile. I guess we'll both find out, won't we? I said, smiling back at her. How about 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon? I got directions to her house and said I'd see her then. Saturday will take care of everything and Carol will be gone on Sunday, I thought to myself. On Friday, I stayed at work a little later than usual and worked my ass off. I wrote a vacation request and said I wanted my vacation pay the following Friday. I was looking forward to it, only wishing Carol would come with me, but I guess that didn't happen. Saturday, I slept in late and had a hearty breakfast in the hotel dining room. It was a beautiful day and I made sure to dress appropriately. Casual pants and tennis shoes. When I pulled up, Diana was just finishing washing the windshield. When she saw me, she smiled. Just making sure you'll be able to see well. That's one of the first things to go missing when you hit 50, she said, laughing. Sam, I think it's number 3, but damn it, I can't remember what number 1 and 2 are. Her car drove like a dream, a little stiff because of the racing suspension, but still great. After a while, I was able to shift gears without thinking about what I was doing, and I even tried shifting once before I realized I was approaching 95 miles per hour. I need to buy something more exciting than the Volvo I drive now. It's certainly not my thing, but maybe I should get a Corvette, I told her as we slowed to a dull roar. Something I could drive to work every day and that wouldn't break the bank. It was already 4 when we gassed up the car on the way to her house. Diane, do you have dinner plans? I feel like I owe you more than a tank of gas for your trouble. Don't you have plans with your wife tonight? She asked, looking me over from one side to the other. Not tonight. How about buying me a drink? Since you say so, go ahead. I need to take a shower, so pick me up around 6 if that's okay. At 6, but dress casual. I know a nice Italian place with great food and a great wine list. I had 5 more calls from Carol. I listened to each one of them, growing increasingly irritated. Damn it, Steve, call me. I'm leaving tomorrow and I need to talk to you before I leave, was her last call. I deleted it along with the others. The food was excellent and we shared a bottle of wine. I didn't bring up the subject of Carol, but Diane spoke up. How are things with you and your wife? She asked, sipping her wine. No, she's leaving tomorrow on a 7-day Caribbean cruise with her sister, I answered her. So nah, I thought you were going to work out your problems. I tried, but she wouldn't talk to me. When I found out about the cruise, I just left. It was pretty stupid, Diana said without mixing words. She said she needed time away from me to think about us and where we were going. How can we work on us if we don't discuss our problems? Anyway, she's flying to the Caribbean tomorrow, and I'm going on a 10-day wine country tour that starts next Saturday. You guys are still playing tit for tat, and you're both going to lose. If it's over, then it's over, and stop these silly games. But if there's still a chance, you two should grab it instead of going on vacation separately, she said, criticizing what we were doing. Dee, we haven't even slept in the same bed in over 6 months. I think my marriage is on artificial life support, and with her leaving, it's just stalled. When I get back, we'll part ways and go our separate ways. I still have enough years in reserve to start over. That is, before I'm 95 and stuck in a damn walker. I still think you're both making a mistake, but these are your lives. I brought her to my house a little after 10. She invited me in saying she was alone because her only daughter had left for college, but I declined. Knowing that if I drank any more I wouldn't be able to drive, she looked too good and I wasn't about to embarrass myself. The week dragged on and I looked forward to the trip. I laid out my clothes and ended up buying 3 more outfits because I had lost another 5 pounds. I figured I could fit everything into 2 medium-sized suitcases, the maximum the airline would allow, and still not charge me a penny. Carol sent me 2 emails and told me that when she got back, we should talk. This could have been a problem since I wasn't here. I considered not even leaving a note but decided against it. I decided to take a little vacation. I'll see you in 2 weeks, was all I wrote. At least she'd know I wasn't lying dead in a ditch somewhere. Why I didn't do it sooner, I don't know, because 2 days later I was already hooked. Every day we went to a different vineyard, set up store, had tours during the day, and wine tastings in the evening. With me was a group of 4 couples, a mother and daughter, and a single woman. We ate together, went on tours, and just socialized. On the 4th day, the only single person in our group approached me. Steve, isn't it? She asked. Yes, and your name is Lori, isn't it? I replied with a smile. Since we were among the odd ones out, would you like to go on a tour of the old Spanish missions tomorrow? She asked. They need at least 2 people, and you're the only one I know. Sounds great. Good thing I brought a good camera with me. They said it would take about 4 hours, including travel time and the tour itself. They'll send a car for us right after the winery tour tomorrow. Lori arranged everything. That night we sat together at dinner. Lori was divorced and said that every year she decides to do something new. Last year, she had gone deep sea diving and gotten certified, and next year she planned to go on an Alaskan cruise. Beyond that, who knows, she told me. I see you're married. Why isn't your wife with you? She's on a 7-day cruise in the Caribbean. You don't like cruises? She wasn't invited. She decided to take her sister instead, I said quietly, sipping wine from my glass. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. That's okay, I wouldn't have gone anyway. She doesn't seem interested in my company anymore. Well, that's her problem. So, as of tonight, you officially become my companion for the rest of the tour. That way, you'll always have someone to eat and talk to. Lori, we all eat together and always talk to each other, I said, looking at her strangely. I know that. It's just official now, she said, smiling and took my hand. The tour went great, and I enjoyed Lori's company more and more each day. She told me that her ex-husband had traded in his car for a newer model. I made him pay dearly for that move. Not only did I get 50% of our assets, but I got a monthly alimony check that I used to pay for all my little adventures. I only wish I had caught it sooner. I'd love to try mountaineering, but at 45, I'm not about to push my luck. I've always dreamed of going on a cruise on a windjammer steamer, where there are no frills and you spend your time sailing from island to island. I would have done it a long time ago if it weren't for the fact that my wife gets motion sickness and I was paying for my son's college until this year, I told her. Don't wait until you're too old to go and enjoy it, she warned me. We talked until almost midnight. Everyone else had already gone to bed when I escorted her back to her cabin. She kissed me on the cheek and told me she had a great time and that I was the best date ever. I bet you say that to every married man you date, I told her. Not really, because you're the first. If I didn't know your background, we wouldn't have even gone on a date tonight. I'm not a homewrecker. I was one myself, so you're lucky. Get some sleep. We have a big day tomorrow, she said as she hugged me tightly and kissed me. I struggled to get to my quarters and tidied up. Before I went to bed, I turned on my cell phone and strangely enough, I had 9 messages from Carol. The first ones were a little abrupt and short, but the last 3 sounded much more sincere. Steve, please call me. I don't know where you are and I need to talk to you, she begged. Now she wants to talk after spending the last 4 months asking me to back off. I erased them again and turned my phone off. After 2 more days on the road, we stopped at the most beautiful winery imaginable. It was built on top of a hill overlooking a lush valley. The windows faced west, so in the evening as we were tasting wine, the sun was setting over the horizon and it took your breath away. I snapped a few pictures and even took a picture of Lori against the sunset. I was having the time of my life. The rooms at the wineries were small cabins with the essentials. They had a shower, a bedroom, and a small living room. One by one, the couples retired to their cabins until it was just Lori and I. This is the life. I could do this on a full-time basis. Take tours of all the wineries in California. Maybe go to Italy and then Germany, I said dreamily out loud. And in 2 years, when you gain a couple £100, they'll have to transport you with a forklift, she said with a laugh. Because of the wine, cheese, and the copious meals we ate nonstop, I think I've gained 5 pounds, she said, rubbing her belly. You're not fat, you look good, I replied. Flattery will get you anywhere, she said, finishing her glass of wine. Let's go for a walk, she said, grabbing the last bottle of wine. The path was lit by torches, and we strolled casually through the winery itself. I wasn't drunk, but I wasn't completely sober either. When she stopped and drew my lips to hers, I didn't resist or pull away, but kissed her back. She dropped the wine bottle and we wrapped our arms around each other, exchanging saliva and stuff. I woke up next to her. How long were you awake? About an hour. We better get going. Our bus will be here by 9 to take us to the next stop, she said. Are you coming? I went back to the cabin, grabbed my luggage, threw it on the bottom of the bus, and went in search of Lori. The hour ride flew by like a blink of an eye as we chatted about nothing and everything. It was our last wine, and I wasn't excited at all. We had another day and a half to go, and we made the most of it. As with all wineries, I bought a case of bottles I liked and sent them all home. I made a note to buy a wine fridge as soon as I got home. That last night, we walked hand in hand to dinner, as we were sorry to see our journey come to an end. We made a total of 6 toasts that last night, exchanging addresses and emails. Dinner, as usual, was amazing, and one by one everyone went to bed. I walked Lori to her quarters and told her I had to pack tonight. I'll miss you, we both said at the same time and laughed out loud. It took me about 20 minutes to get everything packed. I found my airline tickets and parking pass, making sure I knew where everything was. I washed my face and had just gotten under the covers when I heard a knock on the door. I looked out the window and opened the door. Steve, here's my email address and cell phone number. No matter what happens, we'll keep in touch, she said, touching my face with her hand. At the airport, Lori headed to Southwest Airlines and I headed to Delta. I waved at her one last time as we both snapped back to reality. I had a lot to think about on the return flight. I decided that I would probably be back at 1 o'clock 30 and be at the house no later than 3 o'clock. That gave me about an hour and a half before Carol got home from work. After packing my things and picking up my car, I hit the road. I called my secretary Jill to see if there were any fires expected tomorrow. Steve, everything went pretty smoothly. Since you did 90% of what needed to be done before you left, I just sat on my ass all week getting my nails done, Jill said with a laugh. However, Diane wanted to talk to you if you call. Let me switch you to her phone. Customer service, Diana, how can I help you? She answered the phone. You can let me drive your car again, I said in my normal voice. Yeah, Steve, why the hell didn't you tell me you were going to California wine country? I would have gone with you. Diane, you know the house would fall apart if we both left at the same time, I said, trying to sound serious. And besides, you'd probably want to play maid with me, and I wouldn't have any fun at all. You better not have fun, if you know what I mean, she said, now a little irritated. Don't worry, I've been a good boy. What did you even need to talk to me about? I had an unexpected visitor waiting for me Tuesday morning, your wife. She wanted to know if I knew where the hell you were. When I replied that I didn't, she asked if I'd slept with you. Can you imagine? She asked. You told her yes, didn't you? You're crazy. You didn't see her eyes. She was hot to say the least. However, I asked how she liked the cruise and she wanted to know how the hell I knew about it. I told her that you and I had interacted on a friendly level a few times and that I knew you two were having problems. Steve, we had a nice conversation for about 45 minutes, and I told her, like you, that you were both playing with fire. By the time we left, at least she had calmed down. She thinks you won't be home until Friday. Where she got that information, I have no idea. Just keep in mind, I think you've tapped into a hornet's nest. I thanked her and told her I was sorry for all the trouble I had caused her and would see her in the morning if I was still alive. 10 minutes later, I was pulling into my garage, and in another half hour, I was completely unpacked. The house looked the same. At least she hadn't trashed it while I was gone. I was just finishing my second beer and going through the mail when I heard the garage door open. Damn. And here I was hoping it would be at least another half hour before she got home. Carol flew into the kitchen. Where the hell have you been? Why didn't you tell me you were leaving in tow? Where have you been? Were just 3 of the questions I memorized as she continued to talk non-stop for 5 minutes. In wine country in California, and since you decided to take a vacation, so did I. Steve, at least I told you where I was going. She brushed it off. Carol, if something happened, how would I contact you? If I needed to talk to you while you were on board, would I be able to reach you on your cell phone? I asked. You know our data plan doesn't include the Caribbean. That's why I turned off my cell phone when I left. How does it feel to be left in the dark? I asked, looking at a nervous Carol. Well, at least now you're home and we can talk and stop all these silly games. Are you hungry? Do you want to go get something to eat or take something with you? How was your cruise? Did you have any luck? I asked, purposely trying to draw her out. I know your sister must have had fun every night, but what about you? Steve, that's a hell of a question to ask your wife. Do you think I went on the cruise to cheat on you? I have no idea why you went on the cruise. Remember, you didn't want to talk to me about it. Hell, you could have had a threesome every night for all I know. By the way, are those island guys as cool as I've heard they are? Say that. If you're going to act like it, I guess I won't be talking to you today. What else is new? I said, still looking at her. To answer your question, no, I haven't cheated on you, and I have no idea what guys on the island look like, in case you were wondering. Maybe I should ask you the same questions, she replied. There weren't that many island guys in California, I said, trying to diffuse the situation that was now getting out of hand. And no, I wasn't having fun with anyone. I'd love to say that I'd slept with someone but had never done it with her, but I realized Carol wouldn't take that for granted. Why don't we order pizza, open a bottle of wine, and talk? I agree. Why don't you order while I change, she said, and headed upstairs. And then I wondered if she had moved back into our bedroom while I was gone. I guess I would find out tonight. For the first hour, we chatted about all sorts of nonsense. The little things people bring up when they're afraid to broach serious topics. I gave him another 20 minutes before I started asking the hard questions. Did you learn anything while you were on the cruise with the tramp? Steve, I wish you wouldn't call her that. She's been married several times. She just hasn't met the right guy. Carol, she had two boyfriends who loved her and she cheated on them both. And this is the woman you took to see if you wanted to stay married to me? Should I start packing already, or have you already packed all my stuff while I was gone? I said, trying to make a joke. Very funny. You know I didn't do anything like that, but I have to admit I was pretty pissed when I got home and you were gone. That was one of the reasons I left. I figured it would give you extra time to think, not knowing exactly where I was. It was probably cruel, but you deserved it after that cruise announcement. Steve, if I had told you about the cruise earlier, we would have only been fighting. And after I found out, we didn't? 7. But it was only for 2 days, and damn it, you left before I could explain my reasons for wanting to go. So did you make any surprising discoveries? I asked. Only that I still love you and want to stay married to you. Awesome. And I don't think it's going to be like it's been for the last 2 years, I said, to a surprised Carol. I think she thought I was about to cry and throw myself into her arms, but I had long since forgotten that. I need a wife, not a damn neighbor. I can always hire a cook or a maid to do what you do, but hiring a wife is much harder, and that's what I want and won't settle for anything less. Steve, I've been a good wife to you for 25 years. Now all of a sudden you start making demands that I change, or what? Are you going to throw me out with the water? Do you realize how wrong that is? Look, Carol, I'm not making any demands on you except that I refuse to be celibate anymore. If you're no longer interested in making love to me, I'll find someone who will. For heaven's sake, I'm not going to give that up at 50, I said, maybe a little too loudly, trying to get my point across. We've been through all this before. I can't do this 24/7, nor do I want to. Carol, I asked for 3 times a week and you said you'd think about it, but I guess you thought I was kidding. Don't you miss our closeness? Of course I miss it, and I want it all back. But you started playing those stupid games, she chided me back. Carol, we started playing games that have distanced us from each other so much that I have no idea how to even begin to be together again, I said sadly. First of all, she said, getting up and taking my hand, we fell asleep together. Breakfast went by quickly. I had to get back to work. Having only gotten 2 hours of sleep, I looked a little tired. Looks like you need a vacation to recover from your rest, my secretary Jill teased me. She asked if I needed a cup of coffee. There were a few things that needed my immediate attention, but by noon, things were back to normal. I see you're still alive, Diane said as she walked past my office just before 4 o'clock. Were you two talking last night or just shooting each other? Both, I replied with a weak smile. I guess you can't solve everything overnight. Well, at least you're talking for a change, she said, and moved on. We talked, had fun, and talked again for the next month. We solved some of our problems, but eventually realized we couldn't do everything ourselves. Carol recognized David's name from a friend who had used his services years ago and said he was very good. At 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, we found ourselves in his office. How can I help you? Was the first question that came out of his mouth. We both spent almost half an hour explaining how estranged we were, what our problems were. Look, I can't solve your problems overnight, but if you want, we can work on the issues that are tearing you two apart and see where that takes us. We both agreed and began the long road to recovery. We met twice a week. Most of the time we were together, but sometimes he wanted each of us alone to work on our individual issues. He didn't soften anything with us. He told me that what I had done in California was cheating, and that what Carol had done on the cruise was crossing the line too. Apparently, my wife had also found a man to her liking on the cruise and, as she put it, had gone to second base with him more than once. She got a little annoyed when I said I hadn't heard that expression, second base, since I graduated high school. But at least we tried. When he asked us what we saw ourselves as a year from now and 5 years from now, we both had no idea, but it got us thinking. When he asked us how much entertainment was too little and how much was too much, we were on opposite ends of the spectrum. For me, once a week was too little, and for Carol, 3 times a week was too much. But we didn't stop there. It was almost 5 months before we had our first real breakthrough, and another month before we solved the last 2 problems. David was pleased with our results, and for the first time in a long time, Carol and I were happy. Steve, when I got your letter about wanting to go on this cruise, I was doing backflips, Lori told me, standing on the deck looking out at the water. But when you said you were taking your wife along, it dampened my enthusiasm somewhat. she said as she held my hand. I told her I wanted to go alone, but she refused after I had to tell her about our last trip together, I said with a smile. She said something about not sharing my bed this time. Well, if she accidentally falls overboard, I'm warning you in advance that it's not my fault, she said, kissing my cheek. Steve, I can't leave you alone for a minute. I heard my wife's voice coming up behind me and kissing me on the lips. And you must be Lori, she said, holding out her hand. I've heard a lot about you and you're so beautiful, just like Steve said, she said, looking me over. You know what a flatterer he is, Lori replied. Not really, but he better start learning if he knows what's good for him, she said with a smile. So shall we go out to dinner? I'm so glad you were able to move to our table because I still have a few more questions about the wine country tour that I need to talk to you about, she said, and they both laughed looking at me and I blushed even more. I was dead meat, and I knew it. The table in our dining room was set for 10, and by the time the waiter brought the drinks, everyone was seated. There were 4 couples, including us, and one cute young guy who sat next to Lori. I nudged her with my elbow and gave her a thumbs up as she clapped me on the arm. The couples all introduced themselves to each other, giving their names and where they lived. I introduced us as Steve and Diane Moore from the sunny state of Florida and looked at Lori, whose turn it was next. That's right, my wife Diane, not Carol. You see, we finally solved our problems with David's help, but not in the way we had planned. It seemed that we were both on different pages of our lives. Carol was at the point where she wanted to relax and let life take its course as long as it didn't interfere with her laid-back lifestyle. She was starting to enjoy her freedom and didn't want anyone dictating to her what she could or couldn't do, including me. We talked about where we wanted to be a year from now and 5 years from now and discovered we were not on the same planet. We broke up, and now we are better friends than we were together. Next, Carol and I sold our house and split everything in half. We used the same attorney, and within 3 months it was all finalized and we were both much happier. She wanted to do it again, but I told her that while I would have loved to do it, I was in a relationship and I couldn't cheat on Diane as much as I was cheating on her. A week after our last session, I showed up on Diane's doorstep. We talked and went out to dinner, but she told me there was no way in hell she was going to get involved with someone from work. I solved that problem by buying out my 8 weeks of vacation, cashing in my 401k, and buying a thriving travel agency. We started dating the very next day. I got an apartment close to work and rented it on a month-to-month basis and moved in with Diane 3 months later. After her husband died, she dated 2 guys, but both failed to live up to her expectations. I think her husband was much better than just good in bed. After our 3rd date, when she was driving her car instead of me, we stopped in front of her house. Steve, I'm not Carol and I never will be. I don't like games, and if you have a damn problem with me, I expect you to tell me about it so we can clear things up. You both messed up your marriage, and if we want to move on with our lives, I will not tolerate what you both did. I expect you to be honest, faithful, and to put my needs first, and I will do the same for you. So if you can't handle that, there's no point in wasting your time on something that doesn't have the slightest chance of success. Okay, Diana, tell me how you really feel. Don't beat around the bush, tell me straight out I can handle it, I said with a goofy grin on my face, grabbing her and kissing her. Next thing you know, that felt good, I said. Pleasant? Pleasant? She interjected. I didn't rock your world? I thought you were going to say something like it was goddamn great, better than anything else in the world, she said, leaning on her elbow and looking at me. So that, baby, it doesn't matter if you knock my eyes out and leave me blind. All that matters is that we're together, I told her. At 2 months, she wanted to make sure we had an exclusive relationship. At 3 months, I moved in with her, and at 6 months we were married in a small ceremony among friends and family. Her daughter was a bridesmaid, and with my sons I had 2 best men. In passing, she asked if I wanted to invite my ex, but I told her it was our day. And although we remained on good terms, Carol was my past and she was my future. All she replied was, "Good answer." Since we never had the opportunity to take a formal vacation, I arranged a cruise for the 2 of us. I texted Lori and asked if she was interested, and she immediately replied, "Yes." Eventually, I told Lori that I would take my new wife, and although she was a little disappointed, she still wanted to see the 2 of us. I just need to meet the woman who grabbed your ass so soon after you became available. We had a great time. Lori never picked up any of the young guys at our table, but she did mention a certain man from Denver that she really liked. He's nice and all, but he wants to make an honest woman out of me. and I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Let me give you some advice, Diana said, leaning over to Lori and whispering to her. If he's worth it, grab him as soon as possible. If not, he might not be available when you're ready, she said, grabbing my leg. So if you'll excuse us, I want to try that new way you told me about. Though I can't promise it won't accidentally slip in, she said with a wide smile as we walked hand in hand back to our quarters. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.